From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. And happy Eclipse Day. Millions across North America look to the skies with special glasses today to see a once-in-a-generation event, a total eclipse of the sun. Most of Alabama saw about an 80% eclipse as the moon blocked out the sun's light. I watched much of the event from NASA's live streaming on YouTube, which had live hits from totality locations in Mexico, Texas, Arkansas, and all the way to Niagara Falls. Many from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville were in Russellville, Arkansas for that total eclipse event. I actually spoke with Joseph Pelfrey, the director of Marshall Space Flight Center, just after the eclipse from Arkansas. Here's a clip from that conversation.
NASA Marshall our team was stationed here in Russellville, Arkansas. The community has been tremendous partners. We were in the full path of totality and got 4 minutes and 11 seconds of total eclipse, and it was absolutely amazing, stunning to see and experience here. As things started to get dark, you could feel it cool down. And then when we went into totality, it was like it was right at sunset and pretty dark. And the street lights started coming on. Probably would have heard crickets if it wasn't for everybody cheering so loud. It was quite an amazing experience. This was my first view to be able to see totality here in the path, and just an amazing opportunity.
And you can watch our full interview later in the show. Governor Kay Ivey found an interesting place to catch the eclipse today. The governor was visiting Safari Park in South Montgomery County, where she met Miss Kay, a llama named after her. And while you're at Safari Park, I guess you've got to feed the giraffes while you're there, right? Turns out it was a great location to watch the eclipse. And while we had a chance to speak with Ivey, we turned to State House issues, specifically the issue of gambling. The governor came out forcefully at the beginning of the session for the comprehensive package passed by the House. But she's been less vocal ever since things have gotten complicated, with two different versions between the House and the Senate.
Well, all along since my State of the State, I've stated that the people ought to have the right to vote on this important issue, and I still believe that very strongly. And it's just of utmost importance that we put a package in front of them that will limit gaming and responsibly regulate limited forms of gaming. And I agree with Speaker Ledbetter when he said he hoped the House and Senate members could work together. And I agree with that so that the people can have a final say in this.
Gambling is one of several issues we expect to see action on this week. Again, we're just waiting to see if the Senate votes to go to a conference committee and which members are appointed to represent that body. Most expect that to happen this week, but it's unclear whether they would actually report something out of that conference committee that soon, considering how far apart the House and Senate are. Other issues to watch this week include the budgets. The education budget is in House committee tomorrow and could be on the floor as soon as Thursday. The general fund budget could be on the Senate floor this week as well. So those are starting to really move. Also, expect final passage on all or some of that workforce development package that was rolled out 2 weeks ago. This is expected to be a 3 legislative day week, just enough time to get those bills over the finish line. As I mentioned, the education budget is in House committee tomorrow. That's 1 o'clock in room 200 of the State House. Committee Chairman Danny Garrett said the budget proposal is very similar to what Governor Ivey originally proposed. It totals $9.3 billion plus an additional $651 million in supplemental spending for this year. That's from additional revenue that wasn't expected when they budgeted last year. The House is looking to increase the Advancement and Technology Fund to $1 billion this year. Some of the notable line items in the ETF go for funding to help recent initiatives like the Literacy Act and the Principal Act. Let's hone in on that Principal Act funding because this will inform an interview we have coming up later in the show. The House is proposing $7.8 million in the 2024 supplemental, that's this year, to help assistant principals at schools with more than 300 students. That number for the next fiscal year in the ETF budget will be $10.8 million. And the total ETF funding proposed to support the Principal Act is $30.85 million for fiscal year 2025. It's going to be a wonky week. With 11 days left in the session, lawmakers know it's crunch time on legislation they want to get moving. We caught up with House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter as they adjourned last week for a preview of this week to come.
We're going to come 3 days next week. We'd like to get the package out that you talked about. And Greg, of course, we want to start working on those budgets too, because it's going to be important. I know that the general fund budget come out of committee yesterday in the Senate, so we'll start also looking at that. Chairman Reynolds does a tremendous job, and he's been on top of it. And I think it give me an opportunity to congratulate our two budget chairs, because they do a tremendous job. Their committee and them are in tune with what they're trying to do to accomplish for the state, so I applaud them for that.
When we come back, I'll speak with Vic Wilson of the Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools about the importance of principals in education. And later, my full interview with NASA's Joseph Pelfrey about today's solar eclipse. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is Vic Wilson, Executive Director of CLASS. Vic, thanks for coming on the show.
Todd, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, many of our viewers may not be familiar with CLASS. Can you kind of talk about your organization and what it does here in the state of Alabama?
Certainly, be happy to. We're the Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools. It was begun in 1969 as a place for administrators where they could work together to do all their professional learning, all their advocacy, all their conferences. It became CLASS thereafter, and now we do all of the professional learning for all of the principals and assistant principals and school personnel people. We have 13 affiliates under our umbrella. Okay. Anything from child nutrition directors all the way up to superintendents. We actually help with them with some of their stuff too.
Interesting. Okay, so you're talking about principals, assistant principals, administrators, and the like, because we spend so much time talking about teachers, which we should, obviously, in the classroom. But I was talking with Senator Orr the other day, and he described principals as like the coach of the team. You've got to have a good leadership for any school to thrive. So talk about the importance of having that leadership, at the principal level, assistant principal level.
Todd, for years, everyone has known that the number one impact on student learning outside of great parents working with their students is the teacher. Mm-hmm. The teacher is the number one impact a great teacher helps. Closely behind that was principals. And there's actually some new scholarship saying data that shows that principals have as much of an impact on student learning as teachers. So we work hard to ensure that the leader of the teachers has what he or she needs to make a positive impact on students. Mm-hmm. It's critical that we work hard to make sure our principals, assistant principals, building level administrators are able to meet the needs of everyone under their care.
Well, speaking of that, last year you had your principal bill, right? This Senator Orr's bill having to do with, like you said, professional development, making it, giving people pathways to principals and rewarding and some of that kind of thing. And this year, there's going to be some more funding attached to that. Talk about what that process was like to get that bill through last year and now looking towards the funding level.
It was interesting. First time I've ever started a bill from scratch and then carried it all the way through to fruition. I'm not saying I'll never do it again, but it's going to be close. It's not an easy thing to do.
Not for the faint of heart, is it?
It certainly isn't, Todd. But we worked hard to ensure and worked with Senator Orr. Several years ago, the legislature passed the Literacy Act, followed by the Numeracy Act. one of the things that Senator Orr and I had talked about, Representative Garrett, was about making sure that we had the funding necessary for the principals to help with that literacy and numeracy. So if you will, we now have a three-legged stool. We have literacy, numeracy, and leadership. We're one of the few states in the nation that have that. So our legislature is to be commended for putting time, energy, and effort and the funding necessary to do that together. So what we did, my goal was to have mentoring. I'm a big fan of mentoring and coaching. I understand and believe in what that can do for people. So we have a bill that we passed that has mentoring for all first and second year principals, which will begin in July. And then we also have new professional learning standards that have been completed. And every principal and assistant principal will have to have a PLP, which stands for the Professional Learning Plan, that speak to two things that are critical for student learning. One is student growth or student achievement, or both if they so choose, and school culture and climate. And we believe that what we're doing in our state is going to move the needle for education.
So, yeah, that was a pretty big accomplishment last year. Talk about the budget process for this year. What are you looking for to make sure that those programs actually have the dollars behind them that they need?
That's the key. That is the key. All three of those on the three-legged stool, the literacy, numeracy, and leadership, you have to fund them. They have to have the reading coaches, the numeracy coaches, and we have to have the mentors. We have to have the ability to put in place the professional learning opportunities for our principals and assistant principals to get what they need to move the needle. So the funding is critical. Without it, you simply have a paper tiger. You have something that says, we hope to do this, but we can't do it. So I applaud the legislature for talking with the educational entities, working with Dr. Mackey to make sure that the funding is there to do these things. Todd, on a national level, when I go and meet with my peers, people are actually talking to me and saying, what are y'all doing in Alabama? How are you doing that? We want to know more about that. And it makes me feel good. And I know that it makes hopefully it'll help our legislators see how important it is that we continue to do this and fund it properly.
Oh, sure thing. It's always great to have, that feedback coming the other way. Can't say that always happens for Alabama. So yeah, that's positive. I've heard the same thing about literacy. I know we sort of took a lot of that from Mississippi, but other states saying, hey, this is a good, model. I mean, going back into the day to, reading initiative, that maybe we should have kept the gas down on. Well, just to hear you talk about the profession, principals, school administrators, and just the professionalism, you talk about mentorships, you talk about professional development. It just seems a lot different than when I was coming up. I mean, I had some great principals, made a meaningful impact, but this sounds like y'all have gone leaps and bounds from where we were just a couple of decades ago.
Todd, we really have. When I was a principal, it was on that changing of the guard, so to speak, where I was not just a manager. I was not there to make sure everybody was safe, which is still critical. I was not there just to manage and make sure that we had the right people in the right place. I also was called to be the instructional leader and make sure that everything we're doing is what we need to be doing to help learning. Give our teachers what they need to make sure that they can help the students learn at high levels. Principals are all things to all people now. And one of the things that we're very excited about this year is the understanding that an assistant principal is critical to the success of a school as well, so that the principal who's doing the literacy, numeracy, leadership aspects is not alone and has someone there to help and carry out all of the wonderful endeavors that are going on in those schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you certainly don't want, if somebody is chosen, to be an assistant principal, makes it to a principal level, the worst thing they can be is unprepared or, not have the training, not have the resources necessary. I'm sure you've heard feedback over the years and maybe, wow, I wasn't as prepared as I needed to be, and these programs can help fix that.
That's exactly right. We have three things that we do. We have aspiring administrator conferences, we have assistant principal conferences, and we have new principal institutes. And last year we added a principal leadership symposium. So we're trying at every level, those who aspire to be an administrator, we're going to give them what we need. Dr. D'Amica Sanders is our Director of Professional Learning. This morning she shared an email with me of a new assistant principal that's recently hired who said that every question they got in the interview, they were prepared for because of our our aspiring administrator conference. It made us both feel really good. That's kind of her why, she said. So I was very excited to hear that. At the same level, we're helping those assistant principals become principals, because the last thing we want is for a principal to be handed the keys and say, here, don't call me until, unless there's a big problem. You need to be prepared not only to lead and manage the organization, but you also have to manage the instructional aspect of it as well.
Sure.
And visionary and relations. Relationships are so critical with the community, all the stakeholders. A principal has to be forward thinking in regards to that.
Well, it's nice to hear stories about when the hammer meets the nail on the head. Well, the education budget is going to be moving this week, so this is an apropos conversation. Vic, we're out of time, but thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, Todd. Thank you for the great work you do.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
The Alabama Department of Archives and History was founded in 1901, becoming the nation's first publicly funded independent state archives agency. The archives identifies, preserves, and makes accessible records and artifacts of enduring historical value to the state. Thomas Owen founded the agency and served as its first director. He was succeeded by his wife, Marie Bankhead Owen, who headed the archives for 35 years and was the second woman to lead a state agency.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Today's total solar eclipse was a once-in-a-generation event. It's also a reminder of the unique role that Alabama plays in this country's space program. Joining me next from Russellville, Arkansas, where he was able to see the solar eclipse, is Joseph Pelfrey, Director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. Joseph, thanks for coming on the show. And I have to ask, since you're there in Arkansas, I guess y'all got to see the totality, right? The complete, full, total eclipse of the sun.
We did. NASA Marshall our team was stationed here in Russellville, Arkansas. The community has been tremendous partners. We were in the full path of totality and got 4 minutes and 11 seconds of total eclipse. And it was absolutely amazing, stunning to see and experience here. As things started to get dark, you could feel it cool down. And then when we went into totality, it was like it was right at sunset and pretty dark. And the street lights started coming on. Probably would have heard crickets if it wasn't for everybody cheering so loud. But it was quite an amazing experience. This was my first view to be able to see totality here in the path, and just an amazing opportunity.
That's all really interesting. Well, look, I was watching all the different places where, through the path of the eclipse, where different folks from NASA were stationed all along the route. And so it has to be really special, working in the space program, working for NASA, when this, like I said, once-in-a-generation event occurs.
It really is. It's a great opportunity to tell our story of what NASA does in terms of science and exploration, but also from a scientific standpoint, a tremendous opportunity for our scientists. Marshall works in all the scientific disciplines that NASA works in, and specifically today, heliophysics is on the stage, the study of the sun. We have some world-class scientists that are part of our team that were stationed all around the path of totality to be able to study the events of the eclipse and be able to see things that we normally don't get to see from Earth when the sun's just in the sky and it's a normal day. And so our scientists this was a really tremendous opportunity to learn and to continue to expand our knowledge of the sun and what's happening around the corona, looking at the energy that's coming off. We had some sounding rockets that were going to be launched out of White Sands, New Mexico. We had people with telescopes set up all around the path of totality. So for the entire agency, and especially for Marshall and our science team, just a tremendous day to advance our knowledge and continue to study the sun and its effects on Earth, and the things that it has so many effects on everything we do on a day-to-day basis we take for granted. And this is just a great opportunity to learn more.
Well, no, that's a really good point. This isn't just a one-day event for NASA. Your work now begins. You've got to go through all the data to learn what we can from this unique event. So y'all's job is just getting started, I suppose.
Absolutely. Today's just the start. Obviously, a lot of planning to get things ready and to capture as much data as we can. This whole year is a year of heliophysics for the agency. We have a couple of instruments and satellites that are in orbit later this year. The Parker Solar Probe will fly really close to the sun and give us some data that we have never received before. It'll be the closest approach to the sun's surface that we've ever had. That'll be later this year. And so all of the events that are happening this year, especially with the total eclipse today, is just building up our knowledge and understanding. And it's really a lifetime opportunity for a lot of our scientists, considering that the next solar eclipse over the U.S. won't be until 2044. And so it's once in a lifetime for a lot of our scientists to really study and have this opportunity. And then for the general public, it's an opportunity to inspire the next generation, to get kids interested in studying what's going on in our solar system and what's happening here on Earth. And we've had the opportunity to engage many students and kids and general public, parents, everybody excited about today's event.
Well, so this is a solar eclipse. That means we're talking about the moon, right? And we're going back to the moon. I know that the Artemis mission is well underway. I know that Marshall Space Flight Center there in Huntsville really plays a pivotal role. So talk about the Artemis mission and especially Marshall's key role in that mission.
Absolutely. That's a great point. There's been a fun debate today to see who the star of the day was. Was it the sun or was it the moon? Because the moon is what created the eclipse, and there's so much more that we can learn on the moon, and that's really what the Artemis campaign is about. Marshall Space Flight Center is proud to be leading a large number of the activities related to exploring the moon and returning humans to the moon for the first time in 50 years. We developed the Space Launch System rocket, the SLS, had its inaugural flight in November of 2022 to test out the systems. It performed extremely well, and now the team at Marshall is preparing for Artemis 2, which will return humans around the moon for the first time in the Orion spacecraft. And we're launching that mission scheduled for September of 2025. And Marshall's leading the development of the SLS that will launch that crew. We're also leading the development with our industry partners of the next human landers that will return humans to the surface of the moon for the first time in 50 years on a future Artemis flight. And so Marshall's activities very prominent there in those two programs, but we're also starting to prepare for how we do science on the moon and how we're going to operate the science experiments that we're going to do on the moon as we have for many years on the International Space Station. So there's so many aspects of the Artemis campaign that Marshall's either involved or leading for the agency. And so events like today just make us want to go explore even further, to go learn and continue to understand what it's like to live on another celestial body, to live for long durations away from Earth, because all this is preparing us for an eventual trip to Mars, which is our big goal. And so being able to return to the moon sustainably, to stay there for longer durations and allow us to test out the technologies and the systems we have, is just going to prepare us for that trip to the moon. And Marshall's going to be a key leader in leading the way for that trip when we get ready. So a lot of excitement on the center, in the community. Our entire community in Alabama is contributing to what we're doing as an agency, as we have for the last 60 plus years, and we'll continue to do so in the future.
Well, look, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on the show, and congratulations on seeing your first totality.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Thanks for helping tell our story.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Born Henry Louis Aaron on February 5, 1934 in Mobile, baseball icon Hank Aaron first honed his baseball skills while growing up in Alabama. He is best known for breaking Babe Ruth's record of 714 home runs, ultimately hitting 755, a record that stood from 1974 to 2007. During his career, Aaron was a member of the Milwaukee and then Atlanta Braves for 21 seasons and made the National League All-Star team every year from 1955 to 1974. He won 3 Gold Glove Awards for outfield, and his lifetime records for most runs batted in and most extra base hits still stand. Aaron was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1982 with 97.8% of the votes cast. In 2002, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with more coverage of the Alabama legislature here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.